Hello, good evening, everyone. It's going to be a very, very exciting 90 to 120 minutes. The agenda that we have looks like it might be a few days. Building the next workforce with the next workforce. Right? I know a lot of everybody over here is family organizations, right? And when you have next family, a next generation who's getting into the business, right? This is always a challenge. And I can tell you this by myself, because this boy who's standing on the right of me and shaking himself, 7 years back, 8 years back, he joined
Here
me.
I thought growing a beard would make you call me a man.
For a father
Very
or mother,
hard-earned
the boy is always a
beard.
boy. It doesn't matter. I'm still a boy for my parents as well. Right? We started together 8 years back, and it's been a roller coaster for me. I can tell you that, right? And I'm sure those who are parents here, fathers, mothers who are working with their next generation, children, nephews, I'm sure all of you have gone through that. Right, so we decided, both of us, Nikhar, his name is Nikhar, my name is Ashish. Nikhar and Ashish decided that we're going to do maybe a jugalbandi and figure out, all that we have, जो दिल में भड़ास है, आज यहाँ stage पे निकाल लेंगे एक दूसरे के. So when we send out this invite about few weeks back to everyone, a lot of interesting thoughts came by. People said, ये क्या मतलब है इस title का? When you say building the next workforce, what does it mean? And I thought I'll just kind of take you through what kind of perspectives people had. Said, are we talking about the generational challenge, curse, opportunity, whatever it is, the next generation? Or are we talking about succession planning of family businesses? Then they say, all right, there's something more. आपका session ऐसा है कि जैसे वो राजा का बेटा राजा, politician का बेटा politician, doctor का बेटा doctor, and so on and so forth, businessman का बेटा businessman, तो उसके बारे में बताएंगे. Right? Because different entrepreneurs had different kind of questions. Then obviously people ask you, is this about outthinking as to how to really outthink the company? Because so building the organization, building the workforce, it's about outthinking. How do you outthink new technologies, new system, new processes, new models of working, and so on and so forth. So perspectives like that came in. We also got very interesting perspectives. Said, and we had a very interesting session yesterday, where Vikram Tandon, who's the CH President HR for Adani Group, he showed a very interesting research. He said, in the next 5 years, 50% of India's workforce will be Gen Z. 50% of India's workforce. So are we talking about that challenge of that when you have this Gen Z, all the 21, 22, 23-year-olds, how do you really manage them? Right? And I know there are some Gen Z in this room. Right? So it's not a dig at you, boys and girls, if you're around in this room. Right? It is a very interesting generation. So how do you manage that? And then, of course, the last perspective came, and some of the older companies, entrepreneurial companies, said, well, we have a problem. We have 4 generations working. We have baby boomers, so the grandfather, and then the Gen X and the Gen Y and the Gen Z and the millennials, all of them working together, 4 generations. Are you going to talk about how do we manage businesses with 4 generations? Said, oh boy. And when we realized that, did we really make some mistake in our subject? I said, no, let's just figure out, because there is no way you can talk about all of this. But interestingly, family businesses are going through those challenges. Next generation, Gen Z challenges, or succession planning challenges, and so on and so forth. We said, let's just focus on one thing, because there is no way we can pick up all 5 issues and talk. Let's pick up one thing and talk about that, which is family business, the next generation. This means either son, daughter, nephew, whoever is coming, right? Niece, whatever. And I don't want to be gender biased, because we have several panelists from different generations and different genders. So, because lots of time we see, but हमारा तो बेटा आएगा business में ना, राजा का बेटा राजा का बेटी queen बनेगा नहीं बनेगा कोई पूछता नहीं, राजा का बेटा राजा बनेगा. Most often that's the concept. And therefore we decided that when we do this, our speakers today, we're going to have different permutation combination. And we got a permutation combination, mother and son, a father and daughter, father and son, and a father and son, and a father who's got son and daughter both in the business. Of course, I know that we kind of, we had to almost hard jodo request him to come for 10 minutes, and I'll introduce you to all the speakers in a while. All right, but just very interesting business dynamics. And imagine the challenge that I face, and those who know me, and we work together. I've got me and my wife working together. Right, and those who have their spouse working together, you know the challenge you face. Although a lot of my friends say, अरे तुम्हारा तो बड़ा अच्छा है, तुम तो साथ में काम करते हो पूरा घंटे. अरे मैंने कहा मुझसे पूछो, जिसको लगता है उसको पूछो. So therefore, our subject that we decided that let's just focus on how do we really build businesses as the next generation comes in. A lot of you already have the next generation. So essentially, there is no way again we can have all the answers. It's only a session where we are raising some questions, because as HR NXC, some of you know us, some of you don't. We do a lot of work on family businesses. It's been 16 years we've been working with various segments, various industries, and mid-segment family businesses, where we have 2 generations the 3 generations, even 4 generations working together. Very, very complex family businesses. Just to give you a perspective on HR NXT, we're a 16-year young company. We started in 2007, largely about 140 people company based out of Bombay, and we have teams now. We don't call offices anymore, teams in Bangalore, Delhi, and Pune. So that's what we are. My interest in family business began when I ran a family business program for really some of the top families in the country. At ISB, I was a director at ISB as part of the founding team. In 2002, I ran a family business with people like Meher Pradhamji, Pulkesh Sheksaria, Ambuja Cement. They all came in for a 1-month AMP and family business programs. And when I worked with these family business next gen, it was very, very exciting. And that's when I decided that I'm going to dedicate a lot of my professional life to family businesses. And therefore, I did my PhD a few years back on family business management. So that's a quick about us. Very quickly, before I get into call the speakers, just to give you a perspective as to what we're talking about, let's look at, we looked at, when we looked at workforce, the next workforce, typically our thought is, oh, let's look at corporations. But as we started doing a research and started talking about it, we said, let's look at history, right? How has the history spanned out from a next generation perspective? And we looked at various examples, right? From Mauryan dynasty to Ming's dynasty to Roman empires and so on and so forth, right? And we said, what's really going on? How did they build the next workforce? And then we looked at corporations. How did they build the next workforce, right? But just to, before we get there, just to give you some statistics, right? Family business, a lot of people think of family business, acha, even when you go to B schools, a lot of people say, is it a family business? I really don't want to join a family business. I mean, it was there a few years back, but I know it's kind of changing now because people realize that family business is 90% of the world's business. And therefore we say that before the multinational corporation was family business, before the Industrial Revolution was family business, before the Enlightenment of Greece or Roman Empire was family businesses, it has been there. And family businesses contribute about 70-80%. There are various statistics. 70-80% of world's GDP. Right, family businesses. The new gen, all the new startups you see, and India has become a startup, whatever capital of the world. Right, most of the new startups, the young startup, although a lot of them think they're IIT, IIM guys who are starting up, a lot of family business owners are starting, or either they're starting next generation, or it is fueled by family, the money. There are all large family businesses have their family offices and they're funding a lot of startups. So either way, it's happening. India has 3rd highest number of family managed businesses in the world, 3rd highest. So therefore, we can't ignore. 90% of the world's business is family business anyway, right? But interestingly, a recent Deloitte survey that they did, they found that only 26% of all the respondents that participated, only 26% of the respondents said we have a succession plan in place, right? Big issue, big gap. That while next generation is getting in, but we don't know how to get in. Because Raja की गद्दी पे Raja बैठ जाएगा. पर वो whether वो तैयार है कि नहीं मालूम नहीं. पर बैठेगा ज़रूर, right? And that's what we're talking about. That how do we really make sure that when Raja की गद्दी पे Raja बैठे, which is no issue, absolutely fine, because family legacy, family business, family wealth, family values have to be preserved. But is the Raja का बेटा or बेटी, whosoever is getting on the गद्दी, तैयार है कि नहीं, ready है कि नहीं, right? Or are we doing enough to make him or her ready, right? That's the question we're raising. Right? And of course, there are lots and lots of articles, news, enough and more filled about family business succession, issues and challenges both. Right? So as I said, let's look at history. We looked at history very quickly. Let me just quickly move on. So Roman Empire, very, very interesting. Lasted for about 1,000 years, 1,000 years. Right? What did they do? They institutionalized the succession. Right? Not necessarily Raja ka beta Raja. That who is the best amongst the ministers and so on and so forth, the close-knit family or the extended family, and institutionalize the entire succession, right? And they trained the next generation or the next whosoever next in line on warfare, because warfare was important in those days, political skills, all possible skills, really trained them well. And therefore the Roman Empire, right, lasted for 1,000 years. All right, there is a very interesting study that talks about, a study by one of the big fours that talks about that most family businesses don't go next to 3rd generation. Only 13% family businesses, the study said, goes to 3rd generation. And only 4% to the 4th generation. This means most family businesses will disintegrate in about 50, 60 years. Most family businesses, because 4th generation. And we have seen enough and more businesses disintegrating or dissolving. And I'll talk about some of those examples. So that's the Roman Empire. Of course, they give a lot of autonomy, and that's a subject we're going to talk about when we have our speakers up. When we look at Chola dynasty, very close home, 1,500 years. Look at that, 1,500 years. What did they do right? Something. 21 kings over 1,500 years. Eldest son was the heir of the throne, generally, right? But not necessarily. What they also did was they said, let's put a process of succession. So competitive process. So I've got 4 sons or 4 daughters or whatever. Let's have whosoever is most worthy will take the throne. 1500 years. Crazy, right? They must have done something right to last for that long. Right? Ming Dynasty, China, 300 years. And I can go on and on. Again, followed a very hereditary succession, the Raja ka beta Raja, but very beautifully, education and training was must. They went through rigorous and they started at the bottom. Not the Raja ka beta Raja, started at the bottom and then take up, right? Will serve as a minister, serve as different functions and then take up the throne. When we look at some of the dynasties that we talk about, like in a very positive manner, closer home, the Mauryan dynasty, right, in India. Great dynasty. We all know that Ashoka the Great started with Chandragupta Maurya, who was trained by the Chanakya, and what an absolutely great empire. His son Bindusara never really took on much, was more into wine and dine and so on and so forth. And then obviously, but his next generation, Ashoka, we all know Ashoka the Great, which is probably the largest empire ever in the history of our country, right? Great empire. But what did he do? No succession planning. He was great, absolutely phenomenal, did a great job. But did he build a succession? Do you know who was after Ashoka? There were 2 kids that he had, a daughter and a son. He went Buddhism way, and the kids also, one went to Sri Lanka, one went some Cambodia, and so on and so forth. The entire dynasty, Mauryan dynasty, dissolved. Right, what a massive dynasty they had built, but dissolved. Right, because they didn't plan succession. Similarly, Mughal Empire, great empire. We all know Mughals, talk about Mughal architecture and whatnot. Great leaders, absolutely fantastic leaders. Right, starting from Babur, Humayun, Akbar the Great. We all know Akbar the Great, again, absolutely fantastic leader. Right? Did he train Jahangir enough? No, he was stuck in his own son Salim's affair thing. Right? Then Jahangir. And then we have Shah Jahan. Did Shah Jahan, again, great leader, absolutely fantastic. What did Shah Jahan do? Did he train his next generation enough? Aurangzeb? Well, wife died, and therefore he was mourning and spent all his wealth in building Taj Mahal. Well, we thank him from the bottom of our heart to build a fabulous monument. But what did he do? Just didn't train next generation. And therefore, when Aurangzeb came, we all know Aurangzeb. Of course, we know all the bad side of Aurangzeb. There was some good side as well. But nothing after Aurangzeb. The entire empire died. Because they just didn't build succession. Great leaders, fantastic at what they did, but just couldn't build the next generation. And therefore, we're talking about our subject, next workforce with the next workforce. Are we really building our next generation well? So that our empires, our businesses, our enterprises last for next 100, 200 years and not just disintegrate with whatever happens, right? Let's look at some of the closer ones. I mean, this was history. Let's look at the modern organizations, right, very quickly, without taking too much of time. Murugappa, fantastic, almost 100-year-old group, maybe more, right? 5th generation, beautifully the way they train. Right, the entire next generation is trained on what is the value of wealth, how do you lend money, because they're a large lending company, very, very beautifully trained. And therefore, they also have, like the Roman Empire, pretty much same, that out of the next generation, the 3 or 4, whether children or the nephews in the family, who's most capable to really lead that. And therefore, they've lasted so long. Look at this man. Right? He knew what time, at what stage to just move out, and got 3 daughters. And the 3 daughters, because he trained the daughters well, obviously the daughters were trained from almost early childhood. They're teenagers, and all the 3 daughters. A 300 crore company, the 3 daughters built a 3,000 crore company. Because they were trained well, the next generation. Right? I was just thinking about it yesterday, and therefore I put some logos, all those who are 40 plus in this room, right, like me. Actually, I'm not really 40 plus.
So you would like to believe.
Yeah. So when we were growing up, when we were in college, when you looked at the 5 top houses in the country, it was Tata. We always used to talk about, because I come from North, a small town, we always used to say Tata, Birla, Mafatlal, Thapar, Dalmia, Modi. And there was large Modi Nagar. Well, fortunately, Tatas and Birlas have carried on. But I mean, with due respects to these large 4 houses, there's still some businesses around. But what they were about 30, 40 years back, they are just nowhere. My first job was Mafatlal Group, by the way, and I know that when I worked with Rishikesh by Mafatlal. What a great man and a great company. But they just couldn't carry on because family food. They just didn't train their generation. Just, they became from what they were to much, much smaller. And we know, I mean, I can, talk about a few more examples, but, maybe politically incorrect to name some more companies. Right? So, this is what we're talking about, gentle ladies. It's about building the next workforce, Companies have done that, history have seen that, and companies who didn't do, or empires that didn't do, they're disintegrated. All right? And therefore, what we did, that we've got some absolutely amazing speakers today to talk about how they have done it, or what are their perspectives on this. So therefore, as I said, there's some good permutation combination we built. The two of our speakers have taken very, very seriously ill. Mr. Tejas Goenka, who's the managing director of Tally, so therefore is available on. He's got serious viral. He's online. And the other one of the speakers is Mr. Hamza Arsiwala, whose daughter is here representing him. But Hamza Arsiwala, again, a very bad viral yesterday. I mean, we had a call yesterday, he couldn't even speak. He said, Ashish, मैं अगर आऊँगा भी online, तो मेरा आवाज़ ही निकलेगा नहीं. So just excuse me, my daughter will represent me. It's all right, so be it. But before we get started, I know there's a man who has come at a very short notice with a very special invite. I'm going to ask him to give a keynote, who's built India's largest logistics company. Mr. Secession Shetty, ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause. Please welcome him. Founder and chairman of All Cargo. All of you heard of All Cargo. They've acquired various companies, including Gati, in the last few years, and became one of those largest, as they call, CPL, or a total logistics company. Just to give you a quick background about Mr. Secession Shetty, and I'm sure, like I go through, I talked about my pain, I don't know, pain or gain, whichever way. I think it's a gain, actually. I shouldn't be talking pain. Working with wife, working with son. He's worked with the family as well. His wife, as well as both the kids, are in business. He has over 3 decades of experience in logistics industry. Obviously, we know that built All Cargo and expanded as one of the very, very large companies. He's also the chairman of Society of the Board of Governors of NITI. We all know about that NITI, which is a great education institution, which is under the Ministry of Education. He has been recognized by various governments, including one of the biggest recognition is by Belgium government, which is Belgium Trade and Industry, with the Commander of Order of the Leopold II by the King Philip of Belgium. He's also got honorary doctor from Mangalore University. He's got Entrepreneur of the Year Award by E&Y, lifetime contribution to freight and by Global Freight Award, to freight industry by the Global Freight Awards. He was also awarded the best CEO from Business Today a few years back. He is a big philanthropist and runs foundations. I'm assuming that wife, and I overheard you, the wife is taking care of that. Foundations like Avashya Foundation, All Cargo Group, CSR arm, which focuses on community development and social welfare. Right, I'm going to welcome Mr. Shetty because he said that he had already warned me at the 8 o'clock meeting with some foreign delegates. So we'll hear his perspectives, and then I'll introduce the rest of the speakers. Mr. Secession Shetty, over to you. Thank you so much for coming by.
Hi, good evening, everybody. First of all, thank you very much, Mr. Arora, for this wonderful introduction. And it's a pleasure for me to be here this evening among distinguished entrepreneurs of our country. And I'm truly privileged to be here. Although the invitation happened last minute because of your few speakers falling ill, and here I am. Thank you. There's very little I can add after what the elaborate presentation that you made about the family business and how one have experienced about companies rising, companies falling, companies getting disintegrated, and companies get acquired or goes down. We read about it every day, and we experience that many, many times in our lives. Like you rightly said, obviously it is all about people at the end of the day at the top, who is competent, who's passionate, who's hungry, who's driven, and who has a mission in life and a purpose in life. So that is how the whole journey gets started. And eventually, one day, we are all human beings. We have to hand over the bait to someone. And it's always about finding that talent or that leader to hand over to. We have many, many examples of that in our country. Look at the Reliance Group, a classic example of a visionary building an organization like that and the next generation, that is Mr. Mukesh Ambani, taking it to another level and making this beautiful place for us and for the Indian businesses to and the families to celebrate the further journey and the accolades that we all earned during that period. So, in my perspective, I run a logistics company which is very thinly spread around the world, although we are among the market leaders in what we do in the small segment of logistics outside India. We did multiple acquisitions internationally and consolidated them and became the largest LCL consolidator in the world with 15% market share. But we work with the middlemen, and the middlemen are always there to squeeze you. So we are always under margin pressure, and we are always under pressure of retaining talent and motivated people across the world in various countries, which is a huge challenge. Because whoever is good, he could go on his own, and good people are always stay with you for a reason, and it's very, very important to create the relevant reason why they should stay with us. So we have to continue to grow. We have to continue to build scale. If you don't, then you have a problem of a margin pressure and very difficult to make money. So that then have another spiraling effect on the entire organization. So we are on our toes all the time, and for me the biggest challenge is how to create that succession and how to keep the family still remain excited and continue to do the hard work. And we are also listed, so we have a quarterly pressure on also the performance. That is the other part of it. So fortunately for me, we expanded quite a bit within India. We invested in assets, owning container freight stations, logistic parks around the country. We have an express distribution business, which we acquired just pre-COVID, a well-established company called Gati. We have a contract logistics company, which is also there in the group. So we have a fairly diversified business within the logistics space. And over the years, I've also been able to establish a family office with the dividends and some of the profit in the sale of assets and salaries and rental income, etc. So the family office obviously has a very different management team which works on where to invest, how to distribute your portfolio, protect your capital, and still make some decent money out of that. So that is another thing that we do. I'm today 66-year-old, and my appeal to most of you here, a lot of young people don't want to get married early, but my advice to them, guys, get married early, bring children to this world quickly, and when you have enough energy to grow them, develop them, and mature them so you can hand over, right? So if you get married at 36, you'll become a father at 40, and then you'll have trouble. So that's a mistake I made. So I had other reasons, but here I am, trying to remain fit. And my son is 29, and both my children went to America, did their graduation. They're very good kids, but they're still very young for handing over a business like this, which I don't need to hand over because business is also reasonably structured. I have CEOs and all the functional heads and people managing it across the world. But like I said, you need a driver, you need a leader, you need somebody to inspire and continue to keep the company healthy. So I would think about the next generation, whatever the heading that you have given, split into two parts. One is the family members, right? The next generation family members. I think there we have to deal, the dynamics are different. We had to deal with them slightly differently compared to the next generation employees or holders. As far as the family members are concerned, fortunately for me particularly, I had a couple of other family members who worked with me, so I have a fair bit of idea about the dynamics there. My wife doesn't work in the company, she works in spending the money in CSR and other areas. So I don't see her that much in the office like you, right? So, so when it comes to your family members, obviously our children we're talking about, we give them education. We have exposed them to the world, taken them on good holidays and given them everything to shop and luxuries, etc. And we put in a lot of data into their mind. So they are an individual with their own thinking and with their own personality. That is something that I think we need to respect and remember that we develop them or they've grown with all the exposure and all the experience, definitely different than we are 50 years ago or whatever. So um, that is one part. So all our decisions need to be on that basis. And also the fact that, think about it, 50 years fast forward, the world has changed tremendously. The way of doing things today is very different versus how we used to do business in the past. So keeping these things in mind and also the way all the Gen Z, X, Z, all of them think very differently, and we obviously cannot enforce anything. It has to be a very engaged conversation and convince logically what is right, what is not right, why certain thing is done in a manner. So which also takes away a lot of energy from you. While you're very occupied, very busy, little less and less energy, but you still have to spend time to explain everything to your family member so that you have a great relationship and you enjoy at home and that part. So one has to be very patient and have a mindset of coaching than directing or ordering, right? So that comes very important. And also the other most important thing is allow them to fail. You can't, I think we all say fail fast, but get up and move forward. So encourage, don't criticize. And sit with them and analyze what happened, why he failed, how he or she failed, and take a big lesson out of it. So that applies not only to your family members, also to the other generation, the other generational employees in the organization. When it comes to the young colleagues, is the right word, in the organization who you bring in, the most important thing is, the way I see it, is that create that importance in the mind of your leaders, your CXOs, that you are been allocated with this new responsibility to develop these young people in your organization. And just imagine, if your children were to go and join a company, how you expect them to be treated by their superiors. So treat and deal with your new employees, management trainees or graduate trainees or whoever it is, think about in that manner. So you take care. And also, as far as I'm concerned, the mandate is very clear that you will be responsible, held accountable, and you will be measured as a part of your balanced scorecard, that if anybody you lose for not managing the people well, you will be answerable for that. So the message is very clear, that you recruit from the campus, bring them on board, and take responsibility to develop them like you're supposed to do it. That is the first part. Then obviously there has to go a lot of research about what kind of people really you need, what kind of skills are required, what kind of background is necessary. All those assessment has to be done by the people concerned who are recruiting in the campus. Building a great employer brand is also very, very important, so that you attract the right talent into your organizations. Because people don't want to join an organization where they have apprehensions. And these days it's very easy to online search about your organization, the Glassdoor or what have you, can very quickly tell you about your organization's culture and employee referrals, and people write all sorts of criticism that if you don't do your, manage your employees well. Obviously, in today's world, the technology is extremely critical because those days of paperwork is gone off the window. Everything works on computer, digital technology need to be adopted. You got to be very quickly be an innovator, improve processes, bureaucracy need to be brought down to a significant extent. All those things are very important to attract good talent into your organization. The other most important thing that I also feel is that about managing people, so which means people skills. There has to be a greater degree of humbleness, a greater degree of connecting with the people, gaining knowledge, and connecting with the young people is also extremely important. I personally spend time with the new recruits. Every new recruit in the organization, I have a kind of a town hall or an engagement with them to ask them questions, get to know them, and get their feedbacks, how they think about the organization and any areas of concern for them, and so that I can communicate with the respective people on that account. The other part is also about deal with people on an adult to adult basis, because not as an adult to parent, because these are all grown up young people who we bring into the organization. Finally, it's also very, very important that we create a great place to work, a fun place to work. Everybody, we spend most of our time in the office. So if going to office is a painful affair, including commuting, eliminate as much as commuting as possible. For example, we spread our offices across in now 5 different locations in Mumbai. One in Vashi, one in Dombivli area, one in Borivali, and of course Kalina also we have. So our workforce works from 4 different locations, and connected obviously in these days. So it's kind of takes away, people are extremely happy about that. Last few important messages are about organization need to continue to grow, both in terms of financial growth and also in terms of knowledge growth within the organization, where people feel happy and secure. They feel well secured. The last and not the least is about using common sense in everything that we do in life, which is many times are missing. And the young people also get connected to the entire environment, social and governance areas, where we also need to pay attention. I think it's a combination of all these things, what I said, will keep the entire workforce for the next path of our life. Yeah, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
I love the 2 things that you talked about, though, marry young, those who are youngsters here. We've got Shaurya, who's not married yet, one of our speakers today. So Shaurya, you get a message quickly. And I think very critical message for the family businesses, that allow them to fail, encourage and don't criticize. Allow them to fail, because most time we think, अरे मेरा पैसा खराब हो जाएगा, मेरा पैसा चला जाएगा, because as entrepreneurs we say मैंने पैसा लगाया, मैंने पैसा कमाया है. Right, that's what we start feeling. And अगर बच्चे ने मतलब पैसे को हटा दिया, whatever loss कर दिया, तो problem हो जाएगी. But I think that's a beautiful lesson for all the family entrepreneurs. Allow them to fail. It's okay, because when you started, I'm sure nobody in this hall would say that when I started my first business, everything that I did was right. We all failed, not once, many times. Okay, moving on, guys. I know that we are kind of already behind time. Very quickly, let me introduce you to all the other speakers, right? And there's one more speaker I have to really haath jodo and say thank you very much, which is the one that I'm going to talk about, Dr. Tulsi Jayakumar. Dr. Tulsi Jayakumar is the Director, Center for Family, Business and Entrepreneurship at SP Bhavan, SP Jain College. I know all of you know about Bhavan's SP Jain Institute of Management, SPJ, IMR. Anybody ex-SP Jain here in this room? Or anybody who's gone through a family program? There is a hand that goes up. Okay, so you're going to be asked questions by her today. That what did you learn in that session? All right, Dr. Tulsi. Again, I connected just 2 days back, and she was nice enough to say, "Okay, I'll join in," because we also, I mean, we obviously read about her a lot. She writes a lot of articles. She's an authority on family businesses. Right. Just to give you her background, alumnus of Delhi School of Economics. She's got about 31 years of experience in the academic experience, of course. She's certified by Family Firm Institute, Boston, with certificate for family business advising, CFBA, and also a certificate for family wealth advising. A lot of you who are family enterprise, of course, you can take some leave from her a little later when we have a break. She writes extensively in media, all kinds of newspapers, with Mint, Economic Times, Financial Express, Hindu Business Line, and so on and so forth. What is more important is that she's written several books. She's co-authored a book on financial markets and institutions, which was published by Pearson Publishing. She's also co-authored 2 books by a very great man called Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan. Everybody knows of R. Gopalakrishnan, ex-director of Tata Sons. Right? The books were Inside the Boardroom, How Behavior Trumps Rationally. And also, she's got one of her cases that she wrote, as you know, that academicians write a lot of business cases, that was awarded as the globally best-selling, most popular by Harvard best-selling cases across the world. And she serves on several boards of industry bodies like FICCI, CII, and IMC. Thank you, Dr. Tulsi Jayakumar, for accepting and coming by. Can you come by and take your stage? Huge round of applause. Thanks, ladies, for Dr. Jayakumar. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask Nikhar to introduce the next gen.
Sounds good. And the next gen is going to be introduced with a lot more energy.
Okay.
It's representative of our culture. Next up, we have Miss Lamya Arsiwala, who I recognized has a lot in common with my journey. We're both media students and realized our calling for entrepreneurship a little later in life. Thankfully, because of the blessings of our parents, right? So we've got Lamya Arsiwala, media communications major in films, passionate about yoga and meditation, director at Stelmec, leads strategy, HR, customer relationship management for the organization. She's also the founder of Luminous Life, a platform that offers various programs, retreats, and sessions to help people live a far more wholesome, healthy, and luminous life. As both of us are doing, ensuring that we're standing on the side, keeping ourselves fit. She has a passion for helping people overcome emotional blocks, manifest their highest potential, and connect with their soul purpose. Been featured in Business World magazine, where she talks about the importance of women prioritizing themselves. I think it's an absolute must, so please read up on this if all of us haven't. She has a blog where she shares insights on topics like meditation, manifestation, self-love, and spiritual growth. As a light worker, brand ambassador. As a light worker and earth warrior, it is Lamya's endeavor to create a safe space for healing, soul growth, and a joyful life. Welcome, Lamya. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Again in absence, but we have his message. I had a very nice and very interesting chat with Mr. Bharat Goenka, who's the vice chairman of Tally Solutions. There's anybody who doesn't know Tally in this room? Right? We all know Tally, right? He co-founded Tally with his father in 1986 because he was looking for a software to manage their own accounting books. And said, "Acha, koi nahi bechta hai, to main apna hi banaunga." Right? And therefore he created Tally. I think the software is called The Accountant. His son Tejas is online, and we will get to meet him soon. He was awarded Padma Shri in 2020 for his contribution in the field of trade and industry. NASSCOM conferred on him Lifetime Achievement Award in 2011. And he's known as, by several industry bodies, those who are in tech industry, he's known as the father of the Indian software product industry. The largest products success story in India is Tally Software, guys. And obviously he's grown Tally like one of the largest enterprise, close to 20 million users and whatnot. So Mr. Goenka, thank you very much. He had a family function that he had to attend in Rajasthan. He had told me that I will do a pre-recording, and therefore we've got all the questions that we will ask panelists or speakers today. I asked him those questions, and we will show what he said about the family business. Very, very interesting, extremely interesting. I mean, I took a lot of leave from him when he was talking to me just 3 days back. So thank you, Mr. Goenka, for blessing us for this.
And then, of course, online we have Tejas joining us, who's the Managing Director of Tally Solutions. Tejas, thank you so much for joining us here. He's an engineer from the University of Pennsylvania. He's, as the Managing Director of Tally, he's working on making connected business environments a reality for small and medium businesses via the next generation and Tally's product roadmap. expanding Tally's footprint beyond India to the Middle East, Africa, Southeast Asia, United States, and Canada to impact the lives of millions of entrepreneurs across the globe. I know that the kind of penetration that Tally has, I've never seen any other product-led growth get to that level. I mean, organizations wouldn't survive without you. So thank you so much, Tejas and Mr. Goenka. Tejas spearheads the research, engineering, product management, strategy, and business development functions at Tally. His customer-centric approach has driven Tally amongst the strongest selling and servicing partner network to 28,000 partners. Tejas led Tally's transition into the GST era with the enhanced product capabilities and distribution network, taking Tally to a 2 million plus strong license base. Welcome, Tejas, and thank you so much for joining us.
When entrepreneurs meet, we only talk about businesses and profits and so on and so forth. But we obviously wanted to give a very different angle to this entire session because there is a social enterprise as well. So I'm going to introduce you to somebody who's very, very exciting, very interesting lady whom I met about 13, 14 years back when some of you know that I am a firewalk Guinness World Record holder. When I did my first firewalk ever after learning, I did it under her blessing. Willie Doctor, she is popularly known as Ma, founder and managing trustee of a very, very interesting trust called Light of Life Trust, spread across the country. She's also a founder of Satyavati Spiritual Foundation and a co-founder, which is their family business when they started long back, co-founder of a market research company called Ormax. She's, as I said, fondly known as Ma, renowned educationist, psychologist, and therapist. When she started her career as a senior lecturer at St. Xavier's, visiting faculty at Nirmala Niketan, and became the head of psychology department at Sophia College in Mumbai, and she was there for almost a decade. She founded Light of Life Trust, LOLT as we call it short form, in 2002, so running for about 21 years, right, with a vision to break the generational cycle of poverty, one life at a time. In the last 21 years, they've impacted about 5.5 lakh, over 500,000 lives across Maharashtra, rural Maharashtra, across Rajasthan, Orissa, Madhya Pradesh, and Gujarat, several states, right? And contributing, this Life Foundation has been contributing to almost about 1,500 villages across the country, right? Founder of Satyavati Spiritual Foundation with the objective of creating an organization dedicated to meditation, counseling, and healing. Obviously, with all when you see her face, she looks like the spiritual guru, and that's what I really, right. She's got some amazing awards globally, and in India, Global Inspirational Leadership Award, Women's Achiever Award. UN also gave her an award of 51 Most Impactful Social Innovator Award of Excellence. Thank you, Ma, for coming, and thank you, Willie, because that's what she'd like to be called as. Thank you for coming by. Please join us on stage. Please join us as well. Academician turned entrepreneur turned spiritual guru. Right?
Super. So the biggest issue with second or third generation entrepreneurs is that there is a huge amount of prejudice. They're always told they were born with a silver spoon in their mouths. However, Ashdeen was a little different. He was born with a doctor beside his name instead of before after, making it extremely simple for him to become a habit coach and one of the best in the country. So welcome, Ashdeen, and thank you so much for joining us here today. Commonly known as the habit coach, and please check out his Instagram, his YouTube, some awesome stuff there. He's widely recognized for his expertise in helping individuals transform their habits and improve their overall well-being. Author of 2 best-selling books, Change Your Habits, Change Your Life, and the Book of Good Habits for Kids. You should have bought this, a little early on. Through his podcast, The Habit Coach, and other platforms, Ashdeen offers practical and actionable advice on habit transformation, mindfulness, and personal development. He's also the director of Ormax, a research and consulting company. He focuses on understanding consumer trends and how brands and companies interact with their consumers. An inspirational leader and a trustee at Light of Life Trust. Thank you so much, Ashdeen, for joining us.
Thank you. I'm sure Ashdeen will say it's never too late. A child is a child, because I know. Wherever you name it, sit next to each other for sure. So here, next to Lamia. I was having a call with Willie and Ashdeen a few days back just to give them a perspective on what we are doing. And Ashdeen was driving, it must be about 8:30 something. Ashdeen was driving to some function. I don't know where, he at least said he was driving some event. And then at the end of the call, mother asked him, "Kitna baje, where are you going? What time will you come home?" Right? I tell you, it doesn't end at all. So thank you very much, Ashdeen, for joining us. Our next speaker is again a father and son, like the Bharat Goenka and Tejas Goenka father and son combination. Now this is very interesting. Bharat Goenka second generation and Tejas third. This is a first generation entrepreneur. Somebody who was professional, qualified catering, from catering, became a chef of Taj, and then one day decided that he's going to hang up his boots and start his own food company. Mr. Ajay Talwar, managing director of a company called Tastel Fine Foods. I have known Ajay for a good about 10 years or so, and in 10 years the company has grown maybe about 20x, if not more. Right? Started his professional career as a chef of Taj, as I said. Tastel Food is close to about 15, 16-year-old now, right? Although a 20-year-old. Right, and they export fine foods from India, and we'll hear more about Tastel Food from Ajay. But I know that whenever I go to the office, there's some absolutely beautiful R&D center over there where you get to taste some really awesome foods. So that's the best thing I know about him. His passion, in addition to food, is innovation, and has designed more than 550 products in-house and marketed worldwide to companies like Walmart and all that. They market all over the world. Right, under his expertise, the company has grown across the world, not just India, across the world, Australia, Canada, USA, Europe, and the Middle East. Right, Tastel has embarked on a sustainability program, which is very interesting. Right, working backward with the farmers and the processors for a seamless, sustainable processing in packaging as well as ingredients. So, thank you, Ajay, for joining us tonight. Please welcome to the stage.
And then we've got the young and dynamic Shaurya Talwar. See, I've been told to introduce all the young people in the most, adjective-full way possible. Right? So he's the Director of Business Development at Tastel Fine Food, with his background in hospitality management and diploma in culinary arts. From the Culinary Institute of America, he worked with several renowned brands like Field Fresh Foods, Future Group, and Tresor Restaurants before joining his family business. In the last 5 years of him joining the business, he's handled key accounts, developed new markets, and launched innovative products for different global brands. He's been instrumental in launching new products and expanding the market reach of Tastel Fine Foods. Passionate about food innovation and creating bespoke products that cater to diverse needs and preferences of customers. Believes every trend presents an opportunity with a window period, and if you see it late, it's as good as missed. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us here today.
So, a quick disclaimer. We know we have a father and son. We have mother and son. We've got father in spirits present, but daughter here, and we got a son present here online. We're going to be asking some very straight questions about how have they been managing, the generational dynamics amongst them. And I'm sure with their responses is not going to be diplomatic, politically right, and so on and so forth. They'll answer because it's so be it. I mean, we're going to be straight shooter at each other, and I'm sure mother and son and the father and son and the father and daughter are going to be very straight in their conversations and their perspectives. How do they manage the generational dynamics? So as we get started, my first question, and we can go with whichever order. First question, let's go with this is very interesting. I was talking with all the speakers were sitting in the lounge, and I said, the older generation, the younger generation. And Willie said, what do you mean by older generation? Right? I said, okay, so give me a right word to say it. He said, say the earlier generation, the next generation. I said, okay, but...
Dr. Arora, you have someone who's neither. You can start with me.
I think that's a good one. So let's start with Tulsi. That's true. Okay, so let's start with, she said, no, I am the in-between, neither older nor the younger, somewhere there, right? So let's start with, and nothing better than start with the guru actually, right? The guru who's been teaching family business to hundreds and thousands of students. So, Dr. Tulsi, in your work, in your experience working with family businesses, and I know you teach a lot of them when they come to SPJM, how have you seen the transition happening and organizations managing this generational dynamics or difference? I don't want to use the word difference. I mean, it is, but the dynamics maybe. How have you seen, in your opinion?
So, good evening, and thank you, Dr. Arora, for inviting me. It's at short notice, but it's really lovely to see so many of you who are building the nation as we see it, right? But as far as the intergenerational dynamics are concerned, there is a recent study that we have done, which is 357 family firms all across India. We come out with a half-yearly State of the Family Business Report at SPJMR's CFBE. We've done one in January, and we've done one now, which should be coming out in the next 10 days. It should be in the press, where we are talking about all kinds of issues which pertain to business and which pertain to family. And what is really surprising is that while business seems to be very resilient, even in the post-COVID era, when we did it in December, January, we found the same kind of a result, which was a 6-monthly kind of a report, and we've done that again. Businesses are extremely gung-ho about the business part, whereas it is the succession where there is an issue. There is a certain kind of temporal ambiguity, okay, which basically means that when we are asking the senior gen, what is the time frame which you're looking at in terms of letting go? They're not very clear about whether they will even let go, right? And whether it is going to be within 5 years, whether it's going to be within 10 years, there is a certain temporal ambiguity about letting go, and that is where the problem is going to come in the family businesses. So the question that you asked me, in fact, the theme of today is very interesting, which is getting the workforce ready for the workforce, or whatever that you called it, right? I will tell you, in my experience, there are two parts to it. One is the workforce, which you're looking at as the family businesses. And the biggest problem with this workforce, the family workforce, is how do they get in the workforce that they desire, right? That is a big challenge. Because if you're looking at the next gen, you spoke about the Gen Z, you are obviously a representative of the next gen, and I'm sure that this is the generation which is looking at digital, which is looking at AI, which is looking at ChatGPT. And I was doing a session with the senior gen just a couple of days back, and we had one gentleman looking very worried and saying, my son wants to transform everything. He wants to bring in technology. What am I supposed to do with the labor force that we have, right? So that is a big challenge when you're looking at the workforce, which is the family business next gen, and they want to build a business of the sort they want to build. That is a huge challenge. So these intergenerational dynamics are going to be critical. We are talking about ownership succession, I assume here, but the bigger challenge is management succession. And you would have lost it if you are not going to give the next gen. So I'll on a lighter note, since it's the evening, I'll just tell you one small joke. So this is Ajit saying to Robert, इस बच्चे को फैमिली बिजनेस में डाल दो, फैमिली इसको जीने नहीं देगा और बिजनेस इसको मरने नहीं देगा, right? Or you could look at it any which way. I mean, you could say business isko jeene nahi dega, family isko marne nahi dega. But many a times, if you're running a good business, it's family isko jeene nahi dega, business isko marne nahi dega, right? So I think those intergenerational dynamics, and I would love to listen from the other panelists. But what we have found is it's very, very difficult to let go. And this is a national survey which we have done with Hansa, right? Hansa is our partner, and so we have found this, and both times in a row, we have found succession is a big problem, digitalization is another big problem, right?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Kusi. Thank you so much. What about Ajay? What's your perspective, and what do you think about the generational dynamics? On take of the subject, building the next workforce with the next workforce. Keep saying it again till the time we remember this.
Hello. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming in and trying to get our views on generation business. I think Mr. Shashi Shetty gave a very good presentation. Half the presentation was covered by Ashish and half by Shashi, so nothing is left for us to say. And I think the transition of business was Madam was saying, I feel technology and IT is very important for the business, and every entrepreneur is my generation. I want to get more into technology. We have a workforce. We have some loyal people working for 20 years, but they also has to be trained to get into the next generation requirements. Because without it, you see tele. Without tele, we can't work today. So it's part of ERP. So the business like us, which is all about food safety, we have to look at technology to how to improve our processes, our systems, because we are we are exporting products to the shelves of the world, and you can't just go wrong. So your quality systems, your ERP system, your ingredients, what you buy, the raw material, everything has to be tested and used. And you can see now, we being an agro economy, a lot of pesticides are sprayed on food, and we have a lot of health issues happening around India and elsewhere. So it's become very important that you have to go backward to the farmers, train them not to spray so much. You have friendly pesticides to do that. So health has become very important, and food we have to eat every day. So, and India is only at 15% at food processing. We have, and the world average is 40%. So we have a long way to go. As far as your question is on generation,
How is it working with the next generation? That's my question.
I think it's getting into the flow. When you're most of the generation today are more educated than what we were when we started out, and they have a good platform to get on somewhere where they can learn immediately. And without hard work and getting into the real thick of the business, you cannot get the management structure or controlling the people, or the kind of employee management and social well-being. So I think Shaurya, he got into the business 9 years back, but it took 2 years for him to get into the real thick of the business. So I think it's a natural way of getting it, and it's natural training. And you have to get, because we are into manufacturing business, so I think he has to train himself and understanding the technicalities of the business and adorning the skills. I think that is a way. I think we also have. I think he has got into that business.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's hear from Willie Doctor. What do you think about I'll come to the next generation later. Let's just hear from the earlier or the current generation. You said current generation. You said use the word current generation and next generation. So the current generation.
Extreme age bias. You skipped Shaurya, went over. You're just not letting the.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I mean.
Because it will give a perspective.
That's
Yeah,
a good idea.
of course.
Oh, you are going to have a debate, is it?
Oh yes, I think the seats need to be exchanged.
So Willie, how is it working with the next generation, and what's your take on the subject? I mean, is it really is it the challenge? Is it the problem? Or is it a great idea to have a next generation in the business?
So, good evening, everyone. And I have a very different perspective about this whole issue. And that is, I think we are all taking a very narrow and restrictive approach towards the whole issue. One needs to take an enlightened approach to looking at one generation and the other generation. We are all just one, all right? And we have separated ourselves in terms of some kind of artificial partitioning by age, experience, and whatever social economics that happen in the family dynamics. So I look back in terms of starting early. How did it all work out in terms of your family? Starting early, I remember Ashton used to love coming to the office, all right? So every day, whenever we went, he would say, Ma, I really want to come with you, or Dad, I want to come with you. And that was the kind of motivation. So we would ask him, what would you do there? And his idea was, I will draw mountains over there. Again, aspirational drawing, if anyone to analyze the drawing aspect of it. But you see that it begins at a very early age, I feel, that you can inspire and plant the seeds of that generation getting awakened to the idea of working with you. And I think those seeds are very important to sow early in life. And then slowly, of course, comes the education base and the generational differences in the education that have grown are fascinating today. So, of course, technology, digital learning, all those things become a part of one's learning. And as we've grown into our family, we realize certain skills which are so important. Communication is so important, because without communication, really, the generational gap will get exaggerated. To understand the person at that level, Ashton, I hope I do that, is very important, because open communication, frank and trusting communication, I think, is at the root of this game. I'm calling it a game because it is ultimately a play which we should all enjoy. It is a leela. We are all transferring our responsibilities to the next gen, and that's such a wonderful thing. Again, looking at it from a different perspective, I feel that we need to see what businesses we are in. Are we into social business? Are we into segments which impact consumers? Are we into marketing? And each one will need a different approach, I feel, rather than just having a very prototype succession plan which is doled out by consultants today. Sorry, not intending. Yes. So,
Taking a dig at me.
okay. I feel that that flexibility of approach needs to be looked at very definitely. And then as we go along, I think we can discuss so many other factors. But I remember that Harvard, of course, was the place to go to. So when I told Ashton, would you like to go and pursue your education at another university in the US? He was absolutely adamant about it. He says, no, India is the best, mummy. Don't you know that? For education. And I really salute him for that, because in that process of discovery, I gave him education which was complete grounding of his own self-realization, which is teach him meditation, which awakened within him creativity, innovativeness, and ability to be confident and create things which were different, all right, and gave him that opportunity. Also, his communication today, I think, because of that, is great. And there are so many different qualities that have blossomed. And I feel that each of us as parents should give that blossom time to our children rather than push them into a business slot or a managerial slot or a competitive leader slot. Let each one develop, grow their potentials, and then join the business, because then it will definitely succeed.
Yeah,
So the successor has to first succeed to be really successful, is my thinking.
That's really beautiful. Very beautiful thought. Absolutely. Allow them to blossom, allow them to find their passion before you really push them into business. Before we get to the next generation, I'm going to just see if we can, even Bharat Goenka spoke very beautifully about how did he manage. So we'll hear his quick words, and then we go to the next generation.
Although there's something that you said, right, which is very interesting. You said allow them to blossom and then push them into the business. No, he said that. So which is why I thought it would be interesting to talk about before pushing them into the business. So I think it's very important to talk about the concept of choice and whether the next generation wants to get into the business or not, irrespective of how they blossom. So we'd love to know your perspectives, right?
So, hi everybody, good evening. It's such a privilege for me to be here today, just as it's such a privilege for me to be a part of my family business. And, you know, kind of going on from what she was saying, firstly, we have to spend a lot more time together. Taking from there, because that's what I wanted to talk about, is I feel like I wouldn't have had this perspective that being a part of my business, my father's business, is a privilege if I was forced into it. So I was very fortunate that I was always given the choice. There was no compulsion or expectation. And what expectation was there was to excel, right? So when I wanted to choose the path of yoga and spirituality, well-being, my father was very clear. You're not going door to door, home to home, teaching yoga for too long. I want you to think about how you can make this into a business. And at that time, it felt like a lot of pressure, but I actually learned to channel my energy towards something that I love doing. And when the time was right, when I found my voice, when I realized what value I can bring into the world, I was ready to, in my 30s, join the business. And it's still a pretty strong inner conflict for me. And I was telling Ashton earlier today that when you're in the business of people coming willingly to change, and in an organization when you have to inspire that because people are resistant to change, that's one of my biggest challenges in this whole conversation. And I'm glad that so many people brought up technology, because we're talking about a very fast-paced world where efficiency is key, and yet we have systems and technologies that are not supporting that. And when you want to do this, you want to bring this change about, you really have to convince people, you have to learn to work at their pace, meet them at their level, because for a lot of them, it's for human beings, it's a habit thing. If you're used to something going a certain way, it's very difficult to change, especially as you get older. So I think this is a very important conversation, and that's another challenge I face. Even though I'm not technologically that sound myself, my husband knows that. So it's, even for me, there's that resistance, but you have to keep allowing that to happen. And when it comes to my father, while he's very open, what happens is he'll say, okay, I give you the mandate, drive this. But then people will come in, senior people will come in and say, we can't focus on our actual work, And so then it gets delayed. It gets pushed back. And you have to have that patience and persevere and gently, I always say, you have to flow like water. You have to just meander and find your path around obstacles. And I think that's what I'm learning day on day. I'm really far from it. And I feel like obstacles come in all the time. But I will come back to one thing. I feel like it's very important for any young person who is being asked to join the business to get clear on what your purpose is. Why are you there? Because if you don't have that sorted out in your head, it will be hard for you to sustain. And you can be there for multiple reasons. You studied that in college because it was what you were meant to do. It could be that you have ambition. You suddenly are very drawn to the product. The market is exciting. It could be that you just love your parent. I mean, in my case, that's one of the reasons I'm there, that I thought this is the best way for me to get more time with him and learn from him. And also, of course, if you believe that you have some value to add, and I think I was talking earlier to you guys, that it takes a few years to figure out where you need to be as well. So for me, the natural thing was to go into HR because I'm a people person. I'm slowly becoming not a people person. But I now really want to move towards the innovation side of things, because I'm also very drawn to the fact that in power, there's great potential for sustainability and for the planet, which is my first love anyway. So this is where I see that there's so much room for us to find our path, but we have to be patient and you have to make mistakes. That trial and error will always happen, without which you'll probably not know what's your place of comfort and joy. And after a while, even that changes, because we humans are built like that. We'll hit a peak and then we need to find another one. So this is what I want to say. I hope that this is relevant for you guys, and I'm sure you find that too. And I'll let Ashton take over from here.
So, it was really funny. I was giving a talk just last week in Sri Lanka to a group of 120 CXOs. And what was the topic? Understanding the next leadership, Gen Z. So everyone came up and said, oh my God, this is a khatarnak topic. Please, I'm so happy that you're discussing this. And being a habit coach, I said that, and through the presentation I was talking, I said, we normally think that it's a communication issue between this generation and that generation and this generation of managers, next generation managers. But being a habit coach, I realized it's actually a funda of habits, and with habits comes intention. Why does this next generation, or what is driving this next generation? And it comes down to these three things. One is a sense of passion. So is there a passion and purpose to what this generation has? The next is a sense of freedom. So this generation holds freedom above everything else. And the next part of that is fairness. Is there fairness taking place in what's taking in the actions that are happening, in the way the businesses are complying? So once I understood this, it was really funny. The people in the audience came out to me and said, Ashden, this is the first time I've understood my employees and my son in the same time. So it was really funny hearing this. A little bit of background. So I started working with mom fairly recently. I started working with my father straight out of college. And the way that I like to talk about it is that he made me he gave me a designation one level above the water cooler, one level below the peon, right? So it was just like, you have to start doing everything. And there was always this aspect of you are different. You know, I cannot show favoritism towards you. And there was always this thing and this cloud that hung over me. And I was always trying to, show that I'm different. And as a kid growing up, you always see, this person's judging me this way, this person's judging me this way. They're always comparing me to my parents. And that always played on my mind. Finally, I realized that my dad and I cannot be a boss and child relationship because, after a while, you getting your boss back home, meaning that is like the scariest thing to happen to you. So I would keep telling people in my employees, like, you just have to deal with him at work. I have to go back and deal with this. So let's keep it different. And then finally, I said that, no, enough is enough. I need to explore, learn, and make my own mistakes and create my own identity. And I think this is a very important aspect for the generation to come out, right? How do you get out of the shadows of these giants that are there in front of you, create your own identity, get to be known for something, and then use the skill sets that you've got to come back into the organization and create a difference. So this is the part where I am currently doing. I'm known all over the place as the habit coach, and companies pay me lakhs and lakhs and lakhs to talk about management and how they can bring habits to change in the culture. And that's what I'm bringing back to my companies. Like, we have 5 different organizations, and with Light of Life Trust, we have fantastic management that is already there. So now it is me tweaking, giving training, using all that stuff that I've learned back into the business. So this is the way that I am seeing it develop. And instead of thinking about managing the next business, it's about creating leadership for the next aspect of this business.
I think that's so beautiful.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
So beautiful. Create your own identity. That's so nice for the next gen, or whatever you want to call yourself, the next gen, current gen. Creating your own identity, I think, is a great message. Let's hear Shaurya, and then we go to Mr. Goenka and Tejas.
Thank you, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here with such prominent personalities here, and already many insights from various experiences and also the conversations we've had prior to the talk. I would like to give you guys a quick background about me, and also specifically on the topic of transformation. I've actually just come back yesterday from a vacation, and when I think about the word transformation. That vacation was transforming for me in one context, which has for example, how many of you are into scuba diving? With a show of hands. Quite a few. I have just joined that family on this trip of mine, which I just came back from. And the context there is, for the last 8 years, I've had a fear of water. And this was my journey, my first journey after 8 years to really deep dive, literally, into the world of water. And when I think about the word transform, that was a transformation of my life, which I achieved in this particular journey. So one of the ways that I see what took me 8 years to go and really dive into water was really just deciding this one fine day that I want to transform my mental space from fear to actually, overcoming it. So when I look at transformation, I think the first step is transforming yourself if you want to transform your workforce, or you have to transform. So my thought process was, okay, if I'm not transforming myself, how am I going to be showcased as an example for transforming others? So literally, one of the first steps of transformation is deep dive, and that was my experience. And what happened was, transformation starts with understanding your fears first. What is stopping you from transformation? After that, when you deep dive into any topic, in my context, water, it takes a period of time before you become one with water. And then there's no fear after that, because you've actually gone to the depths that you never thought you could go. So you understand what that experience means. You understand what the transformation makes you feel. So one of the first, since it's very recent, it really happened 3 days ago. So I was quite fascinated by this, that this is the topic of discussion. So when I talk about
I'll give you a quick background about me. I joined my father's business around now 2013, 14, sorry. So it's almost 9 years in the business. In terms of if it was a movie genre, it was suspense when it started because I had no idea what was happening. Everything was a surprise. Since we are in food, it's quite a technical business as well. So I had no idea what I was talking about because food has different contexts as well. If you're into hospitality, it's food being made for consumers, which you're going to serve right away. When you're into food manufacturing, you don't know the consumers because you're supplying to various supermarkets, so you're not interacting with them. And even the way the food is preserved, just for providing some context, no preservatives. I used to think food used to be preserved with preservatives, but it's actually preserved because of the processes. This was a suspenseful experience for me when I entered the business. And then it became dramatic over the next few years because I think I understood my father through the course of our work and understood many things about leadership as well, but in a very different ways. To give you an example, he would take risks and I wouldn't understand how can any man do something like that or take a risk like that. But over a period of time, somebody mentioned I started understanding the journey of learning, the journey of transformation of my own self from the genres of my work life, from suspense to drama to comparative piece now. And that journey was very interesting, and I would say that I'm closer to transformation in terms of my own self, which would, and now in the process of defining my own role in an organization in the next generation. I figured my role today would be facilitation of work. That's my role in my organization. And that's what I focus on. That was when Mr. Ashish and we worked together. I think that was back in 2015. It was in my first 2 years of joining our organization. And they came from the HR perspective. So that insight sort of stuck with me because I understood that, how do you create structures really for people to empower them to transform your organization. And when I look back now, 8 years later, a lot of the things that I learned have now being structured. I'm focusing only on facilitation of work rather than doing the work. And I think one of the great transformations of my work journey has been how to not let the business go from one Superman to the next Superman. How to be okay with not being the Superman of your organization, because I realized when it was initially suspenseful, like I said, when it became dramatic was when it felt like the organization was going from one central figure to the next central figure. So I felt like people are only going to grow to my level. And I realized some key aspects, like the transformation in me was from being a perfectionist, that this is how things should be done, to being okay, to being really okay with everything not being perfect. And that facilitated work, surprisingly. Bad work as well sometimes, but great work eventually. And that was the biggest transformation I've had in the last 9 years. And now I feel like when I change my job description to facilitation of work, my mind shifts to how can I create structures for people to thrive in. And that's what I believe should be eventually the focus of our generation.
Fabulous.
That's really beautiful. I think it's very beautifully said that my role is facilitation of work, and I don't want to build a business, and there's not very many people will think like that. I don't want to build the business when we go next, that from one Superman to another Superman. It's got to be business that'll sustain for generations. Thank you so much, Shaurya. Beautifully said.
Yeah, I was just going to add, now that all the parents and kids are done praising each other, let's get into the real drama of how to manage conflict.
Not done yet.
Not done yet? Okay.
I have something to say about that. I just came back today, like I said, and my mom at breakfast is like, do you need me to come to be a referee today? So we made a promise in the morning that we don't need you here. We'll behave ourselves.
Okay,
but the point is not to behave yourself, so that we can all learn how to be better.
Then we'll need her here.
Let's hear the Goenkas quickly. All right, I'm going to play Bharat Goenka's words first. I hope it plays now.
Is the mindset problem, which in a way you brought up, right? That if my mindset is that I want my children to become like me, and therefore run the company the way I have, and therefore create a future of the company which I imagine. I have already started on the wrong. 37 years that I ran the company, I never made a mistake. You guys have come, and I'm telling you what you are thinking is wrong. Because that's the implication of the statement. When the reality is that enough number of times in the 37-year journey, I took the company close to bankruptcy. My children should have the same chance. The whole point, Ashish, is what is running an organization require? It requires risk-taking ability. Now what we are saying is, somehow we will get people and somehow we will get our children to run our companies, and we will keep teaching them not to take risk. We are conflict averse generation, and this fact that they're conflict averse actually allows conflicts to perpetuate. They simmer for longer periods. As was rightly said, straight talk. Yes, they have briefer moments of conflict. It's not that conflict didn't exist when we were talking. बोल करके बात करके अपनी कोशिश करते थे कि उस बात को कैसे न कैसे हिट करके समझा दें.
Tejas, let's hear from you. What's your perspective on the subject, and how has been for you working with your dad, and actually for you working with dad and mom both?
It's been interesting. Honestly, for me, I've never needed to. I never wanted to join the business. I've never been forced to join the business. I think for my journey, my first step was figuring out how to get interested. And honestly, that moment was very simple. Dad and mom both asked me one day, I was wasting my time during their summers. And the question he asked me was, do you want to come back and just see what we do? So anyway, stars aligned. I used to go rebellious in shorts and stuff like that to office, but somehow things like panned out. Can you guys hear me, by the way?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you, Tejas, very well. Yes.
Yeah, so I used to go rebellious, and I think I walked away thinking that honestly there's a chance for me to be able to do something in the company. Started working on some project or the other while I was at college, and then the question came back to me saying that while I was looking for a job and trying to figure out what to do after college, Dad just took me aside and said, do you want to come back and run the place? That was, like, for me, that was crazy because, like, which 21-year-old is going to get a chance to do something like that? And which crazy parent I also thought would get a chance, would, like, have the courage to say something like this? So for me, that flipped it, and it's been a very, very interesting journey, I would say. Lots of enthusiasm I joined in 2010-11, around that time. Lots of crazy ideas, world change, I can do this, I can do that, we can do this, etc., etc. But there's also a leadership team to deal with. I think for me, the bigger challenges were dealing with the organization more than dealing with my parents. I think my parents were very, very supportive of all the screw-ups and the bad ideas, and a lot of that was, I was very, very fortunate because I had a lot of space to learn through making mistakes on my own. So that's I guess a lot of where I think for me my confidence comes from, and what's helped me shape my experience. So I would echo what Dad has said. I think he's really lived by what he's shared. Today he's back into coding. That's what he loves doing. I think he hates dealing with people and organization and all of that. So I think I've grown to love a lot of that. My biggest insecurity, to be honest, is the product side. And I think over the last 5 years or so, me taking over the product team and now running everything has been again a very big confidence booster at my personal end. So I think that's been my journey.
Super. Thanks a ton for sharing that, Tejas. All right, let's dive into our next set of questions. And first, I'd like to ask Dr. Tulsi. Actually, all of us, I want your perspectives on this question. What are the top 3 personal and professional conflicts that you see happening generally when it moves or a business moves from one generation to the next, between the two, either way, right? And how have you seen these generations manage or resolve or move ahead from or not resolve these conflicts, but personal and professional? I'd love your opinion on that.
And just to add to that, because I think that Ashdin did talk about that, because when you're working whole day together in the office and you go back, you're still together. So you carry work home and you carry home at work, right? So there is obviously bound to be conflicts. So how do you manage that?
I think the personal conflict between the generations has to do with personalities, right? So you're looking at the senior gen typically having a mindset that I have done this, I know what is to be done, okay? And why would you even do something differently, right? And that's where you would see many a talented next gen actually wanting to drop off from business completely, right? So it's about losing your next gen if you're not going to allow them to make their own mistakes, right? We spoke about this mistakes part, but I think what we need to understand is the concept of similar to a stop loss in trading, right? So what is the maximum risk that you're willing to take? What's the maximum loss that will happen if somebody is going to make a certain a decision? And mind you, I would urge each one of you to think about, I think Dr. Arora spoke about what's called the 33-13-3 rule, okay, which is basically that 33% of the businesses survive to the next generation, the second generation, 13 to the third generation, and it's only 3%. This was some research which was done in the US, but of course, there are other kinds of research also which have contradicted it. Sure. I think what we need to understand as far as this personal professional conflict is concerned, especially for the current gen, is that is the concept of being in the family business important, or is it the concept of families in business being important, right? And that preposition of in makes all the difference in the world. So the personal conflict often arises because of the personality kind of differences. There is a generational gap on account of the access to technology, the kind of perspective that each one brings in. And professionally, of course, it's about, as Ashdin rightly said, it is about not feeling valued, right? I don't know whether I understood it right, but what I have found with many a student of mine is that I'm trying so hard and yet I'm not being valued enough. I'm not allowed to feel like I have achieved something, right? And whatever I have achieved is kind of just put down as ये तो हमने 2 दिन में कर लिया होता, right? Something like that. So I believe that it has to do with this whole concept of, again, an insecurity, right? It's like we as parents don't want our children to ever get hurt. But if you're not going to allow them to run and you're going to keep holding them when they're walking, they're never going to learn, right? So I believe that personal conflict, it comes, or even a professional conflict, comes out of this deep sense of wanting to protect the child and the child saying, let me be, right? Let me make the mistakes that you have probably made, right? And what I see. But I think this concept of stop loss, if you can think about it, and right now we are talking only about one parent and a child. What about family businesses which are far, far more complex? You have cousin consortiums. I have 7 guys, okay, from the next gen working together. I have people who are with 3 generations and 4 generations working together. Another piece on a lighter note again. We were doing this kind of a workshop for the senior gen, and I had the senior gen member sitting there with his nephew, right? And this was about handing over. It was about succession. And this man who was in his early 50s, he said, ma'am, I think I should have brought my father in here first because he has not yet handed over to me. And we are talking about me handing over to the next gen.
One is, what is your general advice on how do you manage this transition, manage this conflict? How do you sort of solve for it, right? And my second one is, you said there's a temporal issue, right? Where handing over, especially, in a large segment of Indian organizations, becomes a big problem, right? Why is that a problem in your experience? Why is it so difficult to hand over?
So the first question first, which is that how do you handle it? I think the part where respectfully Ms. Doctor spoke about not bringing in consultants. I personally, as an academic, would also not really recommend that you bring in consultants. But many a times there is so much of ego. Okay, it's very important for someone to come in from the outside and give you a perspective. If you've been able to build your family business on the basis of certain basic values and principles, and I'll give you one in Hindi, which please allow me to say it, कि मतभेद हो सकता है, मन का भेद नहीं हो सकता. Right? If you work with that principle, that there has to be a space for people to dissent, to disagree with each other, and yet we'll never go back and say that we are, at loggerheads with each other. I think that is the fundamental principle. So, but that requires a lot of courage, because it's, yes, even between father and son, or a father and a daughter, lesser so with a father and a daughter, but definitely between a father and a son, I have seen a lot of ego issues. But it's also between two cousins who can't stand to see each other. Okay, it is between a brother and a sister who can't stand to see each other, and that has to do with it starts at, say, age 5, where the brother says, but you gave my sister the bigger paratha, or whatever that was. Okay, it starts way back then. It's not something which has happened today. And as far as the temporal ambiguity part was concerned, very quickly, because we have a large panel. So the kind of reasons that have been stated by the senior gen is lack of people who are efficient to take over. Okay, conflict amongst the next gen. A third very big reason is what happens to my own financial security. The senior gen has to secure itself financially before it lets go, right? And also we are looking at things like there is no next gen available. But if I have the time, I will come back and probably give you the story of this German company. I'm sure you've heard of it, Jub Holdings, right? It's a brilliant story of how you can actually get professionals to run your company while you take a back seat as an owner, if you have enough turmoil and conflict within the family.
Beautiful points, and so has Indian companies like Pidilite done very beautifully. They've got professionals. Dabur have done it a couple of times differently. But I think as we move to the next other speakers, since we talk about conflict, I think conflict most often arises because of lack of communication. We're not talking enough. Right? And when I was talking to Mr. Bharat Goenka, he said very nicely, I don't want to get into technology right now because to get his video, it'll take time. He said, "Hum log darpok the." Very interestingly, he said, "Hum log darpok the." This means the current generation to the older generation. He said, we couldn't speak. If we had a conflict with our father, right, we would just keep it to ourselves and think that it will just, over a period of next few days, it'll just end.
Dr. Arora, it's not that there is not communication. Communication is unidirectional. You need to learn how to listen also.
No, the fact is the way me and my father communicates, if we have an issue, and the way that my son will communicate with me, because he will send me a very long list of agenda. He said, I'd like to talk to you. Set aside a time. I said, Acha. I mean, and I'll actually have butterflies in my stomach when I have to have a conversation like that. Right? And the older generation probably, it was when there was any conflict, you would just think that it'll just thoda din mein nikal jayega. It'll just get over gradually. That's how we manage, and that's what Bharat Goenka also said. But anyway, let's hear from others. How do you guys manage communication between father and son, and then between father and mother and son?
I have a point to make here.
Yep.
We speak about conflict management, and we speak about the first generation being responsible for managing that conflict and that transition of letting go. I have learned a different perspective. Is the second generation making the first generation comfortable enough to hand over? What does that process look like? I'll give you an example. I think you spoke about a father and son duo, ego being a big problem. I feel like sons learn by example of their father, and what happens is subliminally we learn, and what we accuse them of is what we are actually doing ourselves because we learn from them. So you're not a listener. I'm not a listener either. So we're not listening to each other. You have an ignorant attachment style. I have an ignorant attachment style. We are not discussing conflicts. So when conflicts arise in the initial phase, when you're young and when you're just joining a business, and of course everyone has a different experience, they join at different times of their life. I joined when I was 22, 23. So at that point in time, I was like, the responsibility is of the first generation to essentially hand over. And so when there was a conflict, my strategy was create conflict. My strategy was, create chaos, because it's not my responsibility to sort it out. I've joined the business, so I started looking at it as my egoistic approach. I have joined the business. And then it was a great journey, though, to come to an understanding of each other. When we really started, what happens is, like one of the people, you said that when you're having conflict, it goes back home. So what happens is, when you create conflict as a second generation, and when you create chaos, when you come back, you're coming back to the same house. Now, where you live, that conflict cannot survive after a period of time. So then you come to realization that I need to create peace in a time of war. So then the learning is, how do I create peace? Can I change him? Or can I change me? He's come from a way of life.
Or can you move out of the house?
Yeah. But my finances depend on him, so that is not an option at that point in time. So, I mean, all the contexts are pointing to only one solution, which is like, become the former of peace in a time of war. Then a very interesting transformation. So I would be actually very interested into putting the second generation's perspective to making the first generation accustomed to, handing over. I was like, okay, how can I listen if he can't? We are different people. Why am I becoming the same person that I'm accusing him of? So then the journey started about understanding. Like I said, I understood my father through our business, is because I understood what I did, not how I was different. And I feel like as a second generation, we need to understand what would make the first generation hand over to us. What is that thing that is their fear? I mean, and what is that thing that is my fear? Am I doing enough to make him to hand over to me? Or how can I make him comfortable to hand over? So those thought processes, and everyone has, of course, different contexts, and like you said, like different industries, different types of businesses have different contexts of handing over. Like our industry requires technical expertise, quality expertise. And if I did not deep dive into all of that, he wouldn't be confident enough to hand over. So, yeah.
That's awesome advice, yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to ask Lamia and Ashleen, because very different perspectives. Lamia, you are a part of industry which is largely male dominated. Power sector, EPC sector and all are male dominated, and very, very unlike of a woman to get into the sector. And obviously a protective father probably could, tum jitna chahiye kar lo, apna find your passion and so on and so forth. How do you manage that communication between you and your dad, or any conflict? How do you manage between you and your father? Any quick piece of advice for audience?
So it's very complex when your father or your parent is your parent, and then they also are having you in the workplace where they have to manage the energies of all the other leaders as well. They cannot express favoritism. But at the same time, they don't want to hold you back, but they don't want you to be disruptive. It's like, it's tough for a parent, because you are trying to figure, how much can I push, how much can I pull? And they kind of find that sweet spot. But I think when it comes to disagreements and conflict, and then I'll come to the women part, you have to just basically agree to disagree. You have to say that if I come with conflict, I'll be met with conflict, as you said, right? So there are times when you'll have a different path. And I think the beauty of living with our parents in the structure that we are, and I don't anymore, but in the fact is that I feel like I have many more breakthroughs with him when he's in the home ground, because he's a lot more receptive. Or if we're out for dinner, or if we're on vacation, suddenly I can, get him to understand some of my strategies, versus when he's inundated with 100 things, or his mind is in a different place. And then coming back to women, so even today, as I came here today, and he couldn't make it, last night I called him, I said, listen, I'm going to go tomorrow. And he's like, you better not speak your mind.
By the way, he's joined online and listening to you.
Yeah, I'm sure. And even today, he tried to tell me a few things that I should tone down. And I mean, I'll respect him, of course. But at the end of the day, we have to be true to ourselves. And coming into a family business, I was saying this at our retreat, it's karma. We're born in these families, and it's through relationships that we learn. So we need this conflict, we need this growth. That's why we choose these people as our parents at a soul level too. So while he thinks I'm very capable in some things, he's very aware of my failures and my shortcomings. But I think that it is a difficult place as an entrepreneur, as the promoter of the company, to say, okay, I know that my child will do well here, but what about how are other people receiving it? And I think you just have to keep gaining the respect of other leaders in the room, because your parent is always going to, at the end of the day, love you, in spite of your errors. But they also want you to be perceived in a certain light amongst other leaders who've grown the business with him. And when it comes to women in a male-dominated environment, I just think that women I'm so inspired by you both, honestly. And the saris, I've been just looking at that. Because women, I feel, have the ability to have attention to detail. They are a lot more receptive beyond what meets the eye. They're so much more willing to learn because they don't feel like they know it all. In that inferiority, they're just more willing, they adjust. And we have the gift of intuition. So sometimes we have a knack with something that a male might miss because they have a set way of doing it. So there's a huge space for women to enter, but also they have to be given responsibility. I think someone said that don't just bring them in, but also don't just say I'm giving you the responsibility, but truly give them that control, which I think you have to earn. You have to really become worthy of it. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on the topic.
Thank you. I think since we are moving only the next generation, right, Ashdin, for you, I don't know how you manage, because when you work under, as Shaurya said and Dr. Tulsi also said, when you work under, the Chhatra Chaya of Ma or spiritual guru or a leader like Willie, who's well known, who's well respected, and you take on. Right, it's a very, very. I don't know how you felt it, but I'm sure it must have been extremely difficult because people look at her from a very different perspective, not just as a business entrepreneur leader. Right, she is respected socially, psychologically, as a meditation guru, spiritual guru, and whatnot. How did you take it on, and how do you manage communication gaps or conflict, if there are any?
I love this because, as mum being spiritual leader, etc., happened when I was that age, right? So I've seen it growing up. I've seen my entire house be occupied with people. I never had my room when I came back from school because the people waiting to meet mom at that point of time sitting there. So I've seen all of that happen. It's very interesting because I have 2 parents that have very different styles of running businesses, right? So there was a dad who was very hands-on, and then there was mom who was leading by love. And I was like, wow, management through love, which was a completely different style altogether. And that was a learning experience through this. I was like, so you can build such a huge organization just by creating this sense of love and camaraderie and a family together.
And just to add, when you say large organization, by the way, just for people to know, so in Light of Life, I think about 300 people full-time and about close to 4,000 people who work exclusively for Light of Life all across the country. Right?
It was a very funny situation we had. We had one team meeting, and our CEO is here, and he said that we will show our organization chart. And they took out this chart, and it went from one end to the other end to the point where the sticky glue was not enough to hold it up. So then we had to say, no, we'll fold it up. We'll try and figure out how to make it smaller and do it. So yeah, so large organization held together with love, which was fantastic. So it is me learning these skills from mom on how to take it forward. So that's how I would see this as a leadership.
This is the first time I heard, and I'm sure everybody heard this, management by love. Right? I mean, we've heard about all kind of stuff, management by walking around, wandering about, whatever. All right, but management by love is the first time. Great lesson. Okay, you got some other questions? Otherwise, I want to move to people.
Just one question, and then we'll put it out to the audience. But this is a mildly controversial question.
Let's ask Tejas
the
this question.
Subject of this question is what got you here may not get you there, which means that it happens in several businesses both ways, where either one generation believes the next generation is just not capable of taking the business to where it ought to go, right, from attitude, skills and knowledge perspective. And sometimes it also so happens that the younger generation feels that, there's a lot of positive progress, right? Because people, one is still trying to run the business like a lala, and not sort of giving out control, right? And so the younger generation is okay. The older generation is sort of limiting the business, and at some point one has to take a call of letting one or the other go, or sort of taking a completely alternate approach. I'd love all of your opinions on how do you deal with that, right? Where you've gotten the realization that the business that one has spent a relatively long time building, what's got you here may not take you where you wanted to go, either generation. So, Doctor, would you want to start off with your thoughts on that?
Yes. I think this is very interesting and challenging. And I find that all the time in my vision, which is so large and which kind of always encompasses global strategies and so on, which I keep pushing to my CEO as well as the operational people. And of course, Ashton has grown with that thinking that we should not limit ourselves to thinking about only our country, that we need to expand our spaces to include everyone in the world. And with that vision, which is so kind of, what shall I say, futuristic, it is important for everyone who work together to realize that we can and that I can. And once that attitude forms with that confidence that whatever vision you have and the mission will flow from that and I can manage that, I feel that the wheels start working and the flow of energy then moves in that direction, and sure enough you attain the perfect target that you desire. So I feel that it is one's vision. It is definitely the manifestation of that vision, as you put it, and then the intention that flows from it with the whole team making it their objective to achieve. I feel that is very important, even in the generational differences. Once there is oneness, everything flows.
Super.
So the question was that how do you deal with the fact that what has brought you here will not take you to the next level?
Yeah, both ways. So, for example, it could be one generation thinking the next generation just doesn't have the attitude, skills, and knowledge to take over and ensure that the business grows at the pace that it should. Or it could be the next generation thinking that the previous generation is sort of holding the business back. So how do you deal with that?
So I think it's very, very important, I think, as ma'am has been also speaking about, of having this mindset of, Schumpeter called it creative destruction, okay? Not being so much in love with what you have created that you don't want to let it go. I think if you've read this book or watched this movie, Bridge Over the River Kwai, I don't know if you've watched that.
Yeah.
So, so behaviorally there is something called the endowment effect, okay? And that is the fact that you love something which you think you possess, right? Now, whether it is the old, the current gen or the next gen, they have to be willing to give up on what they are really in love with, okay? Because you need to have planned attrition in the human resources. Similarly, you need to be able to hive off a business. It's like a gangrenoted limb, which you will need to cut off if the body has to survive, right? So you will need to have this kind of people within your team who are doing an environment scanning all the time, okay? If it's not you yourself who are able to do that, you will need to have a mindset where you say, I'm willing to give up, okay? And that's not easy, because it's almost like you're in love with whatever you have created. It's not easy at all. But unless and until that psyche happens, and that's what I was saying earlier also, that where you're not willing to do it, probably somebody from outside has to come in and show you a mirror. It could be your teacher who's teaching you the course on family dynamics, or it could be an external consultant. But sometimes you need to have someone from outside saying, look, these are the kind of mistakes. And if you want to take a business which is going to be transgenerational, by the way, the oldest family business is a Japanese business or Japanese businesses, okay? A business which was 1,400 plus years, okay? That's a real estate business in Japan. And recently I was reading about another Japanese business, I can't remember the name, but this was 718 AD.
That's right.
Okay, and it still continues
59
to exist.
generations working. Hospitality industry, run a hotel still.
Yeah. So it's not as though you can't really have that. And that's where we are saying, how are you entering the family business? Are you looking at it as my family business, which has to continue for generations? Or is it that you're willing to accept change, where you say, what has brought us here, whether it is in terms of the manpower, whether it is in terms of technology, whether it is in terms of partnerships, okay, or the very business models. And I think COVID has taught a lot. And the kind of change that one sees today in terms of acceptance probably is something which is unprecedented.
Yep,
right?
Thank you. Tejas, I'm going to ask a question to Tejas. He's online. Tejas, I just recall you said that you really didn't want to get in the business, and then for some strange reason you decided to get in. Right now, you have a very peculiar situation. One that you didn't want to get in, and then you got in. And then the second situation is you're working with a father who's been known as the father of the Indian software product industry. Working with a father who's a Padma Shri awardee, a father who's built a company which is one of the finest company in product in the country and probably in the world. Right? How is it working with a father like that, and how do you really manage? Because there's always in a family business, there's always when you have a big daddy or somebody, the big figure, there's always the issue of expectations and pressure to prove competence. So one side there's a expectation from the father that my son will do well or daughter will do well or next generation will do well, and therefore the next generation always have this pressure that I have to prove, because he's been known in the industry. How do you deal with that pressure, and how do you deal and deal with that expectation management of your dad and mom?
Thanks. I think for me, actually, honestly, I've been very, very, very lucky. I've never had that. I don't know if I'm blind to it or what, but I really give all the credit to my parents. They've never said that you should be doing this. Look at what we built, and we need to leave behind a legacy and all of that. So I honestly, I've never ever felt it. I've never felt it at home. I've never felt it at work. So from a pressure point of view, I think I've been very fortunate, and therefore there's all this self-pressure that one's built up in their own head that you have this opportunity, you have this big thing. I think Shoya mentioned this confrontation of fear. So I think for me, a couple of years ago, I think I realized the biggest insecurity that I have is going back to that statistic of 30, 13, 3, right? That I'll be that 13. Like, that was my, I'll screw this whole thing up. Sorry for that.
Oh, that's okay. That's the next gen language. It's just fine. I'm sure most of the oldies will understand.
I think for me, what I realized was inhibiting me to do as well as I could is really that fear, and I've always had my parents' support, so it's kind of me defeating myself. So it's taken some time to work on it, of course, through coaches and stuff like that. But I think that's probably one point if I reflect back. I think the second thing is, honestly, my view on conflict is going to happen in almost every relationship, right? It's husband, wife, parent, child. There's a relationship is not deep enough if there's not enough good conflict. So it's just I guess it's figuring out how to navigate. I think with me and my dad, it's a very different conflict. With my mom, it's a very different conflict. With me and my sister, it's a very different conflict. And it takes a lot of personal energy and work to kind of figure out how to communicate better. It takes time. It's worth the investment because, their family, it's very, very lucky that we're in close quarters, both at work as well as at home. So it's important to sort out. And it's important to have discussions where I go back to what Lamya said as well. I think it's really important to also agree to disagree. It's okay to have two different opinions. And that shouldn't be looked down upon, that, oh, the family has to feel like one. Yeah, I think it's taken an evolution for us. Like, we've been at it now for 10, 11 years. But it's taken an evolution to get to that point where it's okay. And it's also okay that I disagree with him, and I still run with his decision, or he disagrees with me and he still runs with my decision. Same thing with mom and sister as well.
Thank you, Teja. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to open the floor to people over here. I'm sure you have some questions. I have lots of questions for the people on the stage, but I think it's because of time management. I think we'll just open it. If anybody has any questions to any specific speaker, please say it out.
In many family-owned company, there is a lot of conflict between the next gen and the senior executives. There is
Yes.
she mentioned about little this thing, but many times the success and those things depend on that. How to make a balance of that. This is one. The second thing is slightly different, as you mentioned, management by love. Can I get little more enlightened about that? Because that will help to a lot of people.
The first question is very interesting actually, because we see that the next generation comes in, because a few years back you were calling everybody uncle, and all of a sudden you come in and you start working and you realize ये तो incompetent लोग हैं, ये father के चमचे हैं, loyal लोग हैं, बहुत बेकार हैं, 25 साल से काम कर रहे हैं. The next generation start feeling that, because it many times happens that senior executives have been there for 25, 30 years, and because of loyalty they've been there. And the next generation think that performance, indicate KPIs, numbers, that is important. But the father or the mother or the older generation would want anybody, वो तो हमारा आदमी है, वो तो मेरे साथ, he or she has built the company with me for the last 30 years. So I can't let him go. It's okay, अपना काम करने दो, आप दूसरे लोग ले आओ, उसको अपना काम करने दो. This happens in lots of family business that we work with. Big, very interesting question you raised.
I would like to just quickly comment on the first question. I'll pass on after my answer. I think it's a design problem. When you say the relationship between the second generation and senior management, senior management has sort of like spent many years with the first generation, and for anyone coming in, is sort of like stepping on their toes. When I say it's a design problem, I mean literally the office design problem. I'll give you an example of our office. So when we created a new office in 2017, my cabin is as far away as possible to his cabin. So what would happen is senior management, there would be the problem is parallel communication. What happens is if you have a conversation with the senior management, he may translate it into something else to the first generation. So then that results in a trust deficit between the first and the second generation. One of the key aspects also on the previous question was, when do you agree that a change of process is required for growth? It's also because of the trust deficit that keeps you away from alignment on these things. So when I say it's a design problem, I think when you're designing your offices, you should create a cabin next to your father's or next to the first generation, so that everyone can pass through you first before they go to their cabin.
I'd like to add to what Shaurya is saying. So when we designed the office, he said my office should be the other side of this one. I think it's a part of taking over what, and always the next generation looks at what the senior generation has achieved. Can we get into the shoes? What we have done. I think it's part of your training and part of the journey you through. So I think the next generation should get into the training more and get the skills done. Then they are very confident of what can they take over. So 2 years back, one day he came to me and said, just small example, I want control of things. Nobody's coming and reporting to me properly, right? I want answers from them, and you're traveling somewhere, so we travel a lot ourselves. So there was a conflict, and he was very upset, very frustrated. I'm not getting the charge of things. I'm asking questions to the factory, they're not responding back properly. So at our generation, we become very, very patient. We hear, like Ashish does, nowadays, he hears out. He listens. So we listen. So the next very day, I call the whole team. And business is all about, entrepreneurship is all about teams. How you build your teams and what are the pillars of the business. So some people have worked for 20 years. We also want them to train and, get more skills. So it's training your team all the time and change is constant for us. So next day I called the whole team and said, okay, from today, everyone reports to him. right? Any problem, we go to him. And I was so happy because I'm changing my guard. I'm giving all my responsibilities to him. So the very next day he comes, he's not doing the work that way. So, right? So it's like then you get into the mentorship. When you say, okay, I'm a mentor, if you are getting a problem, then the learning process becomes faster between the son or the next generation, because I feel you have to let go. And when you let go, you have more opportunity to do something else. It requires, I was involved in more routine work, operational work, development work, and innovation, which went to him. So when all pressure went to him, I was so happy, I was free. You have to make yourself free as a first generation, so you can, you can think of something else. Our core competencies, like the way I come from innovation background, research background. I'm very happy and very, very passionate about research. So I got the time to do more research. It's good for the company. So I think we have to look at what are the core competencies of the next generation, and you have to give the charge of them. He has got good management skills. He has taken the business to the next level. So I think it's conflict has to happen between families. And we have conflicts at home. We are on the same platform. We don't discuss business. We go and see football matches. We have similar interests. We sit together and see OTT platform shows. So I think profession has to be kept at this one. Though we are international business, so we discuss sometimes. But I think conflict has to be kept at this one. And it's good for two generations to have differences, because from the differences we can get a lot of learnings, and it's good for the business.
Sure. One of the shows really helped us as well in the OTT platform, Secession.
As long as it wasn't Suits, it's fine.
Any more questions, guys? Anybody else? Any questions, please? Yes, Yogesh.
Since we work a lot with family businesses, when I sometimes talk to the dad and I say, okay, with your son, have you actually groomed him in a manner wherein he should actually be taking the position of a director or a CEO of the company? Versus when I talk to some of the sons and when I say, okay, how have you groomed or inducted yourself into the organization? So when you look at the largest organizations of the world, when they hire management trainees and they groom them for 10, 20 years for them to come to a leadership position. So here is a son who straight away becomes the CEO or the director in the organization. And that's where I see sometimes, and since we are talking about conflicts, etc., in terms of, okay, the older generation which is there, the people who built the organization along with the dad, they find this as a large gap in terms of how is this newer kid who doesn't understand our business, who doesn't understand anything, and he becomes our manager or our boss. So how important it is for the family businesses, for the first generation to the next and the next generation as well, in terms of inducting themselves into the business, grooming themselves into the business, understanding the nuances, the basis of the business, and then seeing, okay, how they grow in the organization.
I think this is even more important and relevant than the conflict between the father and the son, because you have an entire management team which probably will resign if you do not have succession happening at the right time. So you need to be ready for, you need to be sure that the next gen which is coming into the business is doing it at the right time. So it can't be like an helicopter parenting, they call it, a helicopter family business, dropping that the next gen onto the business and saying, "Ja beta, ji le apni zindagi," right? It can't be that. And for that, it's very, very important for you to inculcate the spirit of humility in the child. Because the minute you have given him a director's position, that boy, I mean, yesterday there was one of my students who was telling me that, ma'am, मैंने इनको हमेशा uncle और भैया बुलाया है, अब मैं क्या बुलाऊं उनको? मैं कहा क्या हो गया, आप एक दिन में आप director बन गए, तो भैया and uncle has gone off. You don't lose anything by continuing to call somebody respectfully, right? And respect has to be earned. It can't be demanded. Again, a very small anecdote. I had this young 21-year-old. We do an interview process with the mentor in order to get admission into the program. We don't do just for the participant. Okay, it's a very unique kind of an interview process. So I had this man who had a 1,000 crore business sitting in front of me, and I said, it's a very impressive business you have built, sir. What is your background? Okay, and this man said, ma'am, sorry, I have only studied up to class 10. मैंने सिर्फ 10वीं कक्षा की पढ़ाई की है, but he has a 1,000 crore business. And this 21-year-old boy telling me, मैम इन्होंने बहुत मेहनत की है इसलिए वो यहाँ पे बैठे हैं. I said, बेटा इन्होंने बहुत मेहनत की है इसलिए आप यहाँ बैठे हैं. Right? So I think what is important is, unless you have this notion of this senior management has worked very hard to build this organization. You will have somebody who says at 21, I'm a director and I'm the owner, okay? And I think Warren Buffett has said it, that for family businesses, it's more of a lucky sperm club, right? People need to understand that you have reached there because, with due apologies to you, you did a good karma, right? But you can look at it the other way also. You just got lucky. Yeah, you said that. Yeah. Absolutely. But I'm just saying that when you have that spirituality, you're looking at it as karma. But otherwise, you're behaving with this brashness, which is going to mean a disaster for your family business and also a disaster for all the generations which have worked with you. I have worked with family businesses where when the old generation has stepped down and there is an employee who's leaving, the next generation comes in and says, okay, kahan pe sign karna hai, kaun sa check sign karna hai, right? So that cannot be the way in which you deal with people who have built your organization.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, very
Just a quick thing to add to that. I think, like you said, humility being one of the most prominent things for the next generation to come, learn, and then get embedded into. I think it's also the context at which you look at your privilege. You're a part of a race, but you're starting halfway there already. And I mean, that understanding brings about humility in you. And that understanding is the most important, really, I feel. In my experience, I think we're here to learn from each of our experiences. And I mean, there are many things I wouldn't do when I started into the business, which I learned along the way, that this is the privilege we come from. And today, like you said, lucky sperm. But
No, I didn't say it.
Okay. I mean, you're. Yeah. No, it is, and I mean, why do we look at? We always look at, when I think about succession, we look at someone to succeed our businesses. Why do we look at family in the context of India and in this conversation? Is because there's a feeling of ownership when they work, and that's a given. Now that feeling of ownership is sort of an alignment, between your mind, your heart, and your desires, and that's what makes you have a relationship with the work. And to develop that requires the level of humility. You need to reach that humility, and that is a very interesting transformation, that journey. And I mean, those experiences, I think I have learned from different people I've come across, and these kind of interactions sort of, because as an entrepreneur you become very lonely, and when you are in an ego battle with the first generation, you become lonelier. So talks like this, consultants, in fact, different people that you interact with, the more you interact, the more you communicate, you sort of understand the context of what you do and what you need to do, really. And one of the questions that were asked, I think we didn't have time to respond to that, was how do you understand that what got you here is not going to get you forward? Is that alignment? Is the alignment of your mind, your heart, and your desires, and everyone, with specifically both generations when you're transitioning into it. And that only happens sometimes not because of direct communication with each other, but because of portals like this, where you learn from different people, where you learn from different conversations. Because if I tell him something, he may not listen to me. If a third person tells him something, he will definitely acknowledge that, and vice versa. It works both ways.
Yeah, I think just to add to what Shaurya said, and I think we can just close after that. As organizations move, many a times, and I've seen working with about close to 700-800 family businesses, that as entrepreneurs we wear several hats. The two hats for sure: the hat of an owner and hat of an executive. There are two hats, right? So when you build the organization, do you work organization for greater good or is for harmony, right? So family first, organization first. Because our view always is organization first, because the organization doesn't survive, family will have no reason to survive. And therefore we have seen the downfalls, so many family businesses, because for them it was harmony first, or whether conflicts or harmony first, and not organization first. Right, and I think that's the debate we're going to have forever, that what will come first. But I think that, I'm sure the forward-looking entrepreneurs, and I'm so glad that with people like Shaurya and Lamia and the young generation, or the new generation, that they're talking about is organization first, right? Because you can have conflict, we're happy to have conflicts. I don't want to change my dad or mom or whatever, uncle and so on and so forth. I'm happy because I know that, you passed that age, probably you'll not change, but I'll change. Let me start with the change myself rather than expecting change from somebody else. Right? And then the focus is on organization and not on family, harmony, conflict, communication. वो तो होता रहेगा, चलेगा, होने वाला है. But organization focus, the greater good, because whether you're a 100 people company or 10,000 or 1 lakh people company, the greater good of the organization is more important than the good of just the family. And I think that's the point that you're all echoing in a way, whether it's management by love or management by humility, and so on and so forth. I'm going to ask Nikhar to say a few words, and then Nikhar has a small presentation that he wants to share with you. We can take the questions, since we are managing time a bit, take the questions because we have dinner, and dinner is waiting, the food will get cold. We can take the questions to the speakers outside, if you don't mind, right? I'm sure people have some questions. Nikhar, you want to say a few words and do your presentation?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, extremely grateful to all of you for coming down here and sharing your insights, sharing your advice. Sharing so much from personal experience, right? Really appreciate that. I think, like Lamia would say, we did create a safe space where we could share and, openly share, because I think everybody sitting here, a lot of people run family-run businesses, and such advice is very rare to find, right? So extremely grateful to each and every one of you, and thank you, audience, for keeping your hunger pangs in control, delaying gratification of the food and the wine that's outside, right? And listening so intently and asking so many amazing questions. Really appreciate it. Can we have a big round of applause for all the people who sort of came in here today? Now I have before me the most difficult task that I've ever had to do, which is make a presentation to a hungry audience who wants to get out really quickly. And so brevity is not really my strong suit. But I'm going to try my hardest to ensure that I make you care about a cause in 5 minutes, one that I've spent the last 8 years building. So I'm just about to share my screen with all of you, if you can see it. Aa jaiye, bilkul. Okay, 5 minutes plus a 2-minute video. That's all I'm going to take. Not too much of your time. But in 5 minutes, I have a humongous task, which is to make you care about a problem our country is facing. It's a massive problem, which generations have faced over the course of time. I faced it myself. When I was in class 10, I wanted to become a pilot. When I got into class 11, 12, I was studying for engineering. When I got into college, I started doing filmmaking and advertising and marketing, working with some of the best marketing or advertising agencies in the country. And by the time I got to 3rd year of college, I was clueless about what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I went to friends and peers around me to say, boss, what are you guys doing? And turns out 90% of my classes in Xavier's College was utterly clueless about what they wanted to do for the rest of their lives. And that's when I started a journey where I traveled across India to meet other students, meet professionals, and figure out how many people are really clear about what their passion is, what kinds of careers they want to get into. And that's when me and a couple of others recognized that India is facing a humongous problem and that we need your help to solve this problem. The problem is that generations of people are making one of life's most important decisions, which is their own career and educational decisions in extremely primitive and Stone Age methods. And that's resulting in people getting into completely incorrect careers, not being passionate about the work that they're doing, and therefore becoming underproductive citizens of society. But the problem is actually much deeper. We've got 1 in 7, no worries, 1 in 7 students in India suffering from depression. On a daily basis, we've got 34 kids that commit suicide in our country. That's more than one child every hour telling himself or herself life is just not worth living anymore. The dropout rate for girls in secondary school is 16.88%. Kailash, my love. Versus a 4.1% for boys. We got 47% of girls in India that are married before the age of 18, and a majority of them are from underprivileged families. We got 12.8 million kids in India that are involved in child labor, and a majority of them are girls. Now, when you look at these numbers, you recognize the huge amount of stress, anxiety, and frustration that the youth of our country is going through. Most of us believe that education is going to solve this problem. However, if square pegs continue to be forced into round holes, if people continue to not get the right kind of mentorship, not get the right kind of guidance, not get the right kind of resources, just educating or just developing their skills is not going to solve this problem of economic upliftment. Because if at the end of the day I hate my job, I'm not going to be a productive citizen of society. I'm not going to be able to uplift my family out of the socio-economic crisis that generations have been facing. And we're trying to solve this problem. So over the course of the last 8 years, we've built a career discovery and guidance platform called Mentoria that's working with students across the country, urban and rural, to find their passion and convert it into a high-paying profession, to get mentored for 6 to 8 years in their journey of career discovery and ensure they get into a career they're immensely passionate about. Now, one of the most exciting projects that we started off about 3 months ago was with the help of the doctors and the beautiful foundation that they've created, which is Light of Life Trust. We recognize that at Light of Life Trust, there were 5,000 students in class 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in all rural villages across Maharashtra, across Gujarat, across Orissa, across Rajasthan, where the family annual income is about 60,000 bucks. Monthly income is about $5,500 less than that. And they barely have any resources to educate themselves, which is the problem that Light of Life Trust is solving through good quality capacity building. But to ensure that they find their passion and find careers they are meant for and find opportunities in the world of work, collectively we launched Project Anando, which is a career counseling and mentorship program for students in class 8 to 12 across underprivileged sections of our society. And we launched this project about 3 months ago, and so far across 4 states, 8 regions, we've already managed to transform 2,000 lives together. We were going in the deepest parts of different states, going to government schools in those states, and helping children discover or get exposed to careers they may have never heard of, give them the kind of mentorship that they deserve. Every single day, as we go into different parts of or different states or different government schools, we start recognizing that this entire world of online education and e-learning and so on and so forth is limited to a very small segment of our country. When you actually go down to different villages, different government schools, you start recognizing it's not so much about technology, but about creating opportunity. Which is why every place we go to, the assessments that we use are in Marathi, the counseling is physical, the technology is embedded into those schools to ensure that the students have the right kind of career mentorship available to them. And tonight, we've launched a project called Mission 1000. We know that there are 1,000 girls in class 8 to 12 of college across rural Maharashtra, Gujarat, Rajasthan, who were still raising capital to fund their career guidance and counseling. And we thought, given all of us here run family-run businesses, invest in social causes, ensure that we're creating impact on the planet that we live in, it'd be a great opportunity to run you all through this vision of saying, tonight, can we raise enough capital to transform 1,000 lives? Can we ensure that each of us play our own small part, whether it's 20, 25, 50, 100, how many ever? Can we sponsor career counseling for underprivileged girls in villages across the country in partnership with Mentoria and Light of Life Trust? And that's what Mission 1000 is all about. As you'll see on all your tables, there's a file kept that introduces you to what this concept is, that introduces you to the kind of work that we're doing, and 7 individuals in this audience are responsible for transforming these 2,000 lives because their organizations have supported this cause of helping underprivileged kids across the country get access to good quality mentorship. We play the 2-minute video and then I'm almost done.
Every diamond deserves a chance to shine. But some diamonds never get to. They get burdened by expectations, broken by circumstances, and lose their sparkle before it ever gets a chance to shine. We are on a mission to unearth these hidden gems.
त्यांच्या म्हणजे खूप चांगलं काम केलं तुम्हाला इथं पाठवलं कारण की आमची प्रगतीसाठी आम्हाला काय बनायचं आम्हाला काय नाही बनायचं ह्याच्याबद्दल तर त्यांनी खूप चांगलं काम केलं आणि जे काय पेमेंट होतं त्यांनी पे केलं.
आजची आम्ही मेंटोरियल टेस्ट सॉल्व केली त्यामध्ये आज खूप काही नवीन आम्हाला शिकायला मिळाले कारण जे क्वेश्चन्स शाळेमध्ये विचारले जाऊ शकत नाही तसे आम्हाला क्वेश्चन्स एवढे छान विचारले की त्यामुळे आमची पर्सनॅलिटी खूप चांगली डेव्हलप होऊ शकते आणि त्यांनी आम्हाला भविष्यात पण खूप फायदा होऊ शकतो कारण त्यामध्ये एवढे चांगले आपल्या बिहेवियरबद्दल क्वेश्चन्स होते त्यामुळे ते क्वेश्चन्स आपल्याला खूप उपयोगी पडतील आणि थँक्स टू मेंटोरिया अँड एलवेल.
Light of Life Trust and Mentoria came together with a strong purpose of enabling underprivileged children to discover their passion and achieve their potential. Mission 1000, career mentorship for 1,000 underprivileged girls.
त्यांना थँक्यू बोलली करिअर करायसाठी तुम्ही आम्हाला पुढं टाकलं आमचा करिअर पुढे जाईल तर थँक्यू सो मच.
मला केक संधी पूर्ण बघत त्यांना थँक्यू म्हणायला आवडेल की तुम्ही हे सगळं आयोजित केलं आम्हाला आमचं फ्युचर जोडायला मदत केली.
So that's the mission. If this is a cause that you resonate with, please do open up the files, read a little bit more about it. If you'd like to invest in it, we've got a desk outside. Let us know. And tonight, let's make Mission 1000 a success. Yeah. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Ashish, back to you.
I'm going to call my co-directors, Leena and Usha, if they're around, Jogesh, to give a small memento to our speakers tonight, before we move out for dinner. Are you guys there? Can we have the speakers one by one? Maybe I'm going to call Professor Tulsi because she deserves the first one because she's the one who accepted and invited the shortest notice. Thank you, Professor Tulsi. Thank you. Thank you. Can we have the mother and son together, please, and Leena and Yogesh? Okay. Can we have Lamia? Hamza is online. I know still, I think so. Right, can we have Lamia and we can have Hamza. I don't know if he can show his face. We can see him. A big round of applause, gents and ladies. Or we can have Sohail as well. Sohail, who's been a big support. Her husband who's been around, a big support to her. And can we have Ajay and Shaurya Talwar together? And Usha and Yogesh, you can come by. Alina. Congrats. Thank you very much. Come on, guys. Round of applause, everyone, please. One. Thank you so much. And I know the dinner and some wine and beer is waiting outside. Please join us for wine and dinner. If you have any questions, feel free. I'm sure some of the speakers will be happy to have some answers. Some might want to leave early. I know Professor said she wants to. I'm sure she'll have dinner now with us before she leaves. All right, come guys, let's join in for dinner. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight.